Talk amongst yourselves as I'm prepared to do what I do. Okay. Would you breathe with me, please? Taking a deep breath. And once again. And one more time. There's something so healing about breathing together. I think I may have to do a talk about that sometime. Just there really is something about that act of taking in breath together, almost as one. You'd think that we were one. Like I said, that's another talk for another time. So before I get on with my talk, I want to let you know that we have some copies of this book in the bookstore, The Four Agreements. If you don't have a copy, or if you want to purchase it for a friend or something, if it's been meaningful for you. We bought 10 copies and they sold like hotcakes, and then we bought 10 more, and I keep forgetting to announce that we have them in the bookstore. So I'm doing my duty. Please tell Ethel I was good and that I made my announcement. So if you'd like to pick this book up, it's probably $15. I can't remember what the cost is. So as you know, we've been having a really interesting time going over this book, The Four Agreements. How many of you have been here for the whole series? Oh, excellent, excellent. That's wonderful. If you want to get caught up on it, it's on our YouTube page, or our YouTube channel. So you can just go to our website, go to videos, and it'll take you right there. So you can get caught up on the agreements, because just 1 is really great, 2 is like super great, 3 you're really firing, and if you get a chance to apply all 4 of them, it's great. So what I was going to do, I was going to do this talk last week, but then we had that wild and woolly weather over the weekend, and I figured that a lot of people probably wouldn't come out. Actually, we had quite a nice little crowd, so it was nice. But I did something different because I knew that people who were following the series wouldn't want to miss that last one. So I postponed it until today, and I'm sure you understand. So I don't know about the rest of you, but revisiting this 20-year-old book, because the book has been around for 20 years, revisiting this book has completely opened my eyes once again. Because I realized that for all of my enlightenment, I say in quotation marks, I still get caught up in my old agreements and my old habits. Anybody else? Anybody else willing to cop to it? Okay, some of you. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. Don Miguel's premise, if you are unfamiliar with the Four Agreements, Don Miguel's premise is that from the time that we are born, we are taught certain agreements. We learn the agreements from our parents, from society, from our grandparents, from our religions. You know, anybody that we come in contact with, we are born into a certain number of agreements. And from these agreements, as we grow into maturity, some of these agreements become what is known as the Book of Laws. And it is our personal book of laws. It's kind of a code of ethics that dictate to us what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. And the thing about that is that your book of laws might be different from my book of laws based on the agreements that we were brought up with. Is this making sense to you? Yeah. And to make it even more complex is that many of the agreements that we were brought up with are based on wrong information, incorrect thinking, cultural and religious myths. For instance, here is, I just downloaded this one. Here is one of the agreements that we look at now and think is absolutely ridiculous, and yet 400 years ago, it was absolutely the way of thinking, and that is that the world is flat. So for thousands of years, people believed that the world was flat, and their entire worldview was based on the idea that the world is flat. Now we look back on that and we say, well, that was absolutely ridiculous. But at the time, that's what they believed. So that would become part of their agreements. That would become part of their book of laws. Does that make sense? Makes sense? Okay, so what happens with these agreements is that they get passed on from generation to generation, from family to family, through cultures, through communities, everything. So many of our agreements are based on BS. Belief systems. Yes, I said that. But it's true. Many of our agreements are based on the belief systems of the people preceding us. So what Don Miguel says is that we can discard those old erroneous thinking, that BS that we walk through life with, and commit to living just these 4 agreements that our lives can be absolutely transformed. So I'm going to recap the ones that we've gone through so far. The first one is be impeccable with your word. Now when I first read this book, I thought, well, this is a slam dunk for me, a piece of cake. I'm honest, I'm a person of integrity, I do what I say I'm going to do, I'm punctual, I got this one handled, I am impeccable with my word. But what we have learned is that being impeccable with our word goes much deeper than that. Being impeccable with our word means that as co-creators with God, I talked about in the beginning that we're all one, so we're all part of this oneness. We co-create with it, and how we co-create with it is through our word and the thought that precipitates the word. So our thought is how we create. Our word is how we create. So that means that every time we speak and every time we think, we are invoking the limitless power, the limitless energy of the divine, because we're one with it. So when I speak my word, I've got the whole of it speaking my word with me. Yes? Yes. Are you with me? So that means every time we speak about ourselves, think about that, and every time we speak about other people. Don Miguel tells us that one of the ways that we are being not impeccable with our word is when we engage in the practice of gossip. He refers to gossip as emotional poison. He says it is the worst possible way that we can use our word because we are unaware of the harm that it can cause. And let's face it, we have all been guilty of spreading that emotional poison, yes? And we have all been victims of it as well. It's icky, it is unclean energetically, and it is not impeccable. Which brings us to the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally. And we learned in this lesson, in this chapter, in this particular agreement, what we learned is that nothing anybody else does is about you. It's about them. Nothing anybody does is about you. It is about them. Everybody has their own agreements. Everybody has their own book of laws that is pertaining to them. And everyone in the world has their own experiences, their own memories, and their own paradigms, how they see the world. So if somehow someone has hurt us or has insulted us, it is because of their thinking, not us. You with me? This is a tough one. And because it's not about us, means that we don't need to take it personally. Just sit with that for a second. If it is not about us, then we don't need to take it personally. I shared with you a couple weeks ago, and right after I did this lesson, the next morning I got an email that felt really personal. It felt really personal. And I was really taken aback by it. And I was getting ready to have a reaction. then I remembered what I talked about the day before. And I thought, this isn't about me. This is not about me. This is about that person's fears and concerns and views of life, and it has nothing to do with me. And I was able to be loving in my response because I recognized it was not about me. Now, Don Miguel speculates that if the things that other people are saying or doing, that we take it personally, it could be because maybe we secretly agree with them. Because if it's not true, like that email that I got was not true, it was not a true statement, then why be bothered by it? If we're bothered by it, maybe it's because in our agreement, we somehow think that it's true. Maybe it's our agreement that we are responding to, not theirs. You with me? Is it kind of, yeah, I know, for me too. Another way of putting it, if someone is pushing our buttons, it's because they're our buttons. I heard somebody, well, I know. I heard once somebody say, your family knows where your buttons are because they put them there. But they're still our buttons. So if you don't want your buttons pushed, move the buttons. Stop agreeing with what the other person is saying or thinking or doing. So that brings us to the third agreement, which is don't make assumptions. You know, I actually, this one I'm pretty good at. I'm actually not bad about this because the key to not making assumptions is clear and honest communication. And I'm actually pretty good at it. I make my living with clear, honest communication, right? I did notice who didn't agree, and I'm not taking it personally. The truth is I'm good at it. I'm not perfect at it, of course. But if I don't understand something, I'll ask questions until I understand it. Because I don't like being unclear. I don't like that ickiness that comes from not talking to one another. I don't like that thing. So I've trained myself to ask questions, to get clarity, and to not allow myself to assume something that is based on erroneous information or the agreements as they show up in my life. So, that brings us to our fourth agreement, and that is always do your best. Always do your best. Now you might be thinking, well, of course. I'm a good person. I always do my best. That's not so tough. But again, always with these agreements, doing your best is more than what we think it is when we first hear what the agreement is. Don Miguel put it this way. Under any circumstances, always do your best. Not more, not less. But keep in mind that your best is never going to be the same from one moment to the next. Everything is alive and changing all the time. So your best will sometimes be of high quality, and at other times, it will not be as good. Wow! Wow! I love that idea because it's so very true. There are times when I am absolutely on the top of my form and everything is going smoothly and it's firing on all cylinders and I'm cruising through life. So my best at that time is pretty darn good. And there are other times when life is a struggle. Yeah? I'm tired, I'm uninspired, I've taken something personally. So my best at those times is not always going to be the same as when I'm on top of the world. But I still need to do my best in that moment, understanding that it might not be my most spectacular, but it's the best that I can do at the time. Are you with me? Yeah, I know. So there's this story. Got a 6-year-old boy. Loves baseball. loves baseball. So he decides to go out and play baseball with himself, right? So he's standing there and he's got his bat and he's got his baseball. And he throws it up in there and he swings and he misses. He says, okay, shake it off, shake it off. I'm the world's greatest batter. I'm the world's greatest batter. Okay, here we go. And he throws the ball again and he swings and he misses. Okay, yeah. Okay, no, I am the world's greatest batter. I can do this. I'm the world's greatest batter. So he throws it up again and he swings and he misses. And he says, what do you know? I'm the world's greatest pitcher. That kid didn't judge himself. He didn't berate himself. He changed how he thought about the thing that he was doing. And when he changed his thought about it, he did his best. He went from greatest batter to greatest pitcher, like that. So often when we are not in our top form, we judge ourselves and try to push ourselves harder. Anybody else? Yeah. Don Miguel says that's not a good idea. He says that you will expend too much energy, and in the end, you still won't do your best. You'll just be wearing yourself out. Now, please understand, this is not permission to just say, oh, screw this, I'm just going to, no. Not. I'm hot. That's I did say sometimes I'm at my best, right? Actually, I wanted to do this because then I wanted you to see how beautifully this thing flows. So this is not permission to slack off. That's not what I'm talking about. Here it is. If you are truly doing your best, regardless of what your best is in that particular moment, you're still moving forward. You're still moving towards your goal. You're still living the best life that you can. You're still accomplishing something. It's not about being lazy or not trying. It's about doing the best with where you are at the moment. So Don Miguel tells a story about a man who wants to transcend his suffering. So he goes to the Buddhist temple and he talks to the master. And he says, Master, if I meditate 4 hours a day, how long will it take me to transcend? And the master says it will take you 4 years to transcend. And the man says, well, if I meditate 4 hours a day, how long will it take me to transcend? And the master thinks for a second. He says, if you meditate 4 hours a day, it will take you 20 years to transcend. The man says, I don't understand. If I meditate more, why is it going to take me longer? And here's what the master said. You are not here to sacrifice your joy or your life. You are here to live, to be happy, and to love. If you can do your best with 2 hours of meditation, but you spend 8 hours instead, you will only grow tired, miss the point, and you won't enjoy your life. Do your best, and perhaps you will learn that no matter how long you meditate, you can live, love, and be happy. Always do your best. Agreeing to do your best includes fully participating in life, fully going full out to the best of your ability to living your life. It means doing things because you love doing them, not because you think that you have to. So let me ask you all a question. When you're working, regardless of what it is that you do, I know we've got a number of retired folks, but I know all of you are really busy. So when you're working, are you always doing your best? Or are you sometimes maybe just biding time? Maybe waiting for a better job to come along, or maybe waiting for something more interesting to happen. Anybody? Just me? Just me. Okay. That means that you are not fully participating. You are marking time. I've shared with you before that prior to becoming a minister, during all of my ministerial studies, I worked as a secretary, which I did not like. I didn't like, because, I'm me. And I was working, and I'm working as a secretary. But, I still did a good job. I didn't do my best all the time. That is absolutely true. But I did a good job with where I was in consciousness. But here's the secret. Even though I was doing this job that I didn't really care for, I wasn't just sitting around and bemoaning my lot in life. I was doing my inner and my outer work. I was doing the things that bring meaning to my life, so I was doing my very best to improve things, studying and training and going to the center and doing all the things that I love, singing, everything like this. In other words, even though I was working in this job I didn't care for, I was doing my best to improve. Is this making sense? Making sense to you? So what happened was, I'm doing my best, I'm improving, I'm growing, and what happened was I was lifted out of that job, which I didn't care for, and I was placed into my first ministerial job. Now granted, I had the credentials to do that, but I had a whole lot of students with me, fellow students with me, ministerial students who were not working in the ministry. But because I was doing my work and I was affirming myself and I was doing my very best to not only be a good secretary, but also to be a good student of this teaching, when the time came, I was able to transcend that work and now do what I do now. And I can honestly tell you, to the best of my ability, I still, after 20 years, are doing the very best that I know how. Always working at it. Granted, there are times when it's not as good, I want to rephrase that. There are times when I am better at it than others. That makes sense? Are you with me? Yeah. Are you with me? So that brings me to my final point. This is an important little thing to make. When we are implementing these new agreements, or any spiritual teaching, but we're talking about these agreements, there are going to be times, ladies and gentlemen, when we forget. We forget that we don't want to do the work. It's easier to stick with the old ways. Anybody? Anybody? Yeah. And that is perfectly okay as long as you are doing your best to live by the agreements that you are agreeing to. Because we have to remember, we are unlearning years and years of old agreements. We're just trying out these new agreements. Some of you are brand spanking new. So be gentle with yourselves, understanding that it's not always going to be easy. Nobody ever said consciousness raising was easy. I never said it. So don't beat yourselves up if you find yourself gossiping. If you find yourself taking things personally, like I almost did last week, or if you find yourself making assumptions, don't beat yourself up. Simply go back, remind yourself of what it is that you know, what it is that you are learning, and then start again. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, says, start with where you are. Start with, I have a lot of people that, I'm too old, or oh no, I really blew it, or blah, 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 blah. Yeah, okay. So start with where you are. And always do your best with where you are at the time. So, Don Miguel ends this particular section talking about a spiritual practice, a ritual called puja, which is a Hindu practice. And those who practice puja will take physical items, physical idols, like a statue of Ganesh or something of Shiva or something like that, something that represents their aspect of God that they're working with right now. And they'll take these physical idols and they'll wash them, and they'll bathe them, and they'll feed them, and they'll pour out their love to them. It is their way of ritualistically saying, I love you, God, whatever that God is at the time. And it's just beautiful the way Don Miguel puts it. He says, God is life. God is life in action. The best way to say, I love you, God, is to live your life doing your best. You were born with the right to be happy. You were born with the right to love, to enjoy, and to share love. You are alive, so take your life and enjoy it. Don't resist life passing through you, because that is God passing through you. Your existence proves the existence of God.